right. Can you help me to get back to my... We wanted to show you that movie because those are the concepts that sort of keep us going, that this world is spinning very fast. The web is ever growing. Technology is now at the very center of our lives. And what does that all mean for adult learning, adult literacy? And what can we learn about it, and how can we use technology to support learning? And this is a quote from a very recently published paper called The Power of Technology to Transform Adult Learning. And I think it's pretty much of a truism that we are swimming in a sea of technology without even realizing it, and it touches every aspect of our lives. And for people who do not have access or have not had opportunity to develop those skills, it's going to become increasingly difficult to find good jobs, to take advantage of learning opportunities, etc. And so what we're trying to think about is the world that we live in, and to place adult learning and adult basic education, adult literacy in that context. So I just thought I'd give you a couple of facts and figures here. Apparently 80% of us used the internet for personal reasons in 2007, and I imagine it's more now. That we spend more time now online than we do watching television. That there are 70 million Facebook users, 7 million of them are Canadian. We're the third highest users in the world. We have the highest number of Twitter users in the world. For some reason, Canadians love to tweet. And at last count, and that's a couple of years ago, there were over 21 million cell phones in Canada. So that's the world we live in. And we know that information and communications technologies, ICTs, I'm going to throw a lot of acronyms out today, and that's one of the purposes of the work we're trying to do, is to try to come to grips with some of this technology. But we know that people need computer skills for most jobs. They say now, this guy Newman, who wrote this book called From Rural Roads to Information Superhighway, that the majority of jobs in Ontario will require some level of ICT competency. And in the United States, the projection is that by 2016, 70% of jobs will require some ICT. And that has a lot, I think, to say to us about the kind of work that we're doing in adult literacy, in workforce preparation, etc. Okay. In order to try to come to grips with this, in some sense, we decided at Alpha Plus that we would take a look at the literature, at what's being researched, thought about, written about, in terms of information and learning technologies, to try to figure out what that means for teaching and what that means for learning in our field. So I'm going to speak about our literature review, and I know that when I say to people, they say, what are you working on now? And I say, I'm doing a literature scan. And they say, oh, how interesting. And I know what people are saying, well, it might be interesting to you, but what does it have to do with me? But it is actually quite interesting to hear what the world is saying about technology and teaching, technology and learning. Matthias is going to speak to us about digital technology competency development. Is the serious part of the presentation.
Oh. And that's another part of how we're trying to look at dealing with the issue of technology skills, and in a larger thing, not just the skills that learners and practitioners need to use software, but also how to navigate the web, how to the skills that learners need in the workplace, digital devices, all those kind of things. And that's, I'll talk a little bit about our work that was part of the development of the Ontario Adult Literacy Curriculum, and we took that a little bit outside of that frame, a little bit beyond that.
Okay. So we thought we would take a look at the literature, and when I say the literature, I mean what's being written in academic journals, what's being researched by bodies like, well, it was NIXL in the United States, by people in the UK, in Australia, and in New Zealand. And part of the impetus for this was just the sheer volume of terminology. You hear about e-learning, online learning, flexible learning, distance learning, open learning, blended learning, synchronous and asynchronous learning, and on it goes. And we just thought we need to get a handle on this terminology within our field and see if we can come to some shared understanding when we use this terminology. Because there's a sense that I have and that we have at Alpha Plus that when we throw around this terminology, what we're doing is excluding a lot of people from the conversation sometimes, or we're not really clear about what we're talking about. We also wanted to get some sense of what the world is saying about information and learning technologies and teaching and learning. We wanted to try to contextualize what we were reading and finding to adult basic education. And we wanted to see where there are gaps in research and understanding so that we can try to persuade people to fund some work that will support this field in the integration and use of technology within their own context. Now there's one little problem. There's very little research actually on the current state and use of technology in adult basic education. It's just not or hasn't been a very fundable area. And we have a quite urgent need, I think, as a field to know more about how we are using technology, what we think about technology, where we think technology is an effective tool, how students in our programs are using technology, what they think about technology, and how we can work together. And I think that we need to look at what's going on in Canada, because we know that a lot is going on, but we just don't have a good picture of it. So what we did when we started to do this literature scan was we went outside of adult basic education too, into the general world of education, because we believe that there's a body of knowledge there. Now you can't take a lot of that information and learning and just transpose it onto adult learning, but at least we would get a sense of what's happening in other sectors in the education field. So some of the research that I'll allude to is not directly related to adult basic education, but at the very least it can spark some of our questioning. Oops. Boo-boo, first boo-boo of the day. Now, some work has been done in Canada. I'm not saying that it hasn't. As long ago as 2004, there was a piece of work done on adult literacy practitioners' perceptions of technology, and we still draw on that quite heavily. Matthias worked with Professor Paul Porter from California back in 2006, when we had some pilot programs, e-learning pilot programs in Ontario, and looked at what worked, what didn't, students' perceptions, practitioners' perceptions, etc. There's also the GO project. Was anybody here involved in the GO project, Go Online? It was a cross-Canada project. Within Ontario, it was led by the Community Literacy Ontario group, looking at how practitioners think about and use online learning for their own professional development. And that went on 2007 to 2009. And there's a very good article, and I have a whole bunch of references at the end of the presentation, and you can find all this stuff, by Pat Fahey from Athabasca University and a woman called Diana Twiss from BC, where they really look at if practitioners are interested in pursuing online learning for their own professional development, what are the barriers, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities? And it turns out, and I don't know how many practitioners are in the room, but you guys really want to use online learning as a professional development vehicle. There are a few current projects that are funded by the Office of Literacy and Essential Skills, looking at the use of multimedia, but they're very few. Now, in Ontario, we have something called the Learning Hub. This is an online learning system and program, and it grew out of the work that you did back in 2006. They have 600 students who are learning online. That's just in the English stream in Ontario. There's also an online learning program for the native literacy stream and for the Francophone literacy stream. So, you know, it is happening. People are using technology to teach and learn. We just don't have a good picture of it. So I also was at a workshop earlier in this conference given by 2 women from Newfoundland who are also running an e-learning program. They have 5 sites in Newfoundland, and they have a very high success rate with students, and they're reaching students that otherwise would not be able to attend programs. So we know that things